a slum somewhere.
Looks like you're on camera.
I'm here. Sorry, I'm a little late. We're getting nervous, Jude. You're gonna have to work through the JavaScript.
Yeah.
Super nervous. Okay. All right, well, let's get started. So my thinking was that I would just work through from scratch the JavaScript project, and we'll see how far we can go. I've got about an hour that I can do this, so. And I would encourage you to ask questions as we go. I'll try and explain things, but I may take a few things for granted. Sound good? And we're recording this, so you can reference back on it. Jude will send the link out when we're done. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so you're seeing, let me just move that out of the way. Hopefully you're seeing my like Visual Studio Code and files. Okay. And let me pull up this, the requirements. And actually what I'm going to do is just copy them. So I haven't made any files or anything. So what I'm going to do, and honestly, I don't use Visual Studio Code that much. So hopefully this goes well. I'm hoping, I mean, I've used it a little, but not for a project. The only thing I've really done to set up is that I created a folder called BYU.js. I trust the authors. Wow. Yes, interesting. Never seen that before. Okay, so I just selected the folder and opened it. So now when I create files, they'll just get added there. So I'm gonna create a file called, I don't know, README. And I'm just gonna paste the requirements from the calendar event where we describe the JavaScript project. And unfortunately, it didn't do bullets. So that's great. Just take a second here to make it so that we can read this. Yep. Maybe I should have done this part before, sorry. Add a map. And I guess all these are kind of indented, huh? Um, sorry about this. Okay. Use Ajax methods. Okay, this is, there we go. Okay. These go in here. And I honestly don't know where. Oh, that's why. Okay, cool. So we've got our requirements. And how is that? Is that readable? Is that font readable? Or do I need to make it bigger?
Maybe a little bigger, but yeah, it's reasonable.
Yeah, it's fine for me, but
Oh, wow. That makes like the whole thing bigger.
Perfect.
Okay. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to overlap these a little bit. So I can click back and forth, but still have them make up the screen. Okay. So first thing we're going to need to do is create an HTML file. So the default name for the main page of any website is index.html. Oops, HML. For historical reasons, but I don't think it really matters what you call it for our purposes. And we'll start outlining it. So first of all, we need our doc. What was it? Doc type. Oh, it starts with a type HTML. Is that what it is? Someone correct me. Yep, that is it. HTML5 doc type. We need our root HTML element. Oh, come on, Visual Studio Code isn't auto-completing those. And then we need a head. Interesting, now it wants to, but not the right one. Maybe I just don't know the shortcuts. And then we'll need a body. That is so weird. Why isn't it? Those ones already have closing tags. Okay. And I'll just break these. And I guess so that we can verify it's working. I'm starting to regret doing 4 spaces. Let's do 2. Because it's going to get nested a little bit probably. Let's just put like a heading tag. My page. Something really creative. Okay, make sure to save that. And let's go ahead and open that. I mean, you do things like reveal in File Explorer. Okay. Let me just, I mean, it looks like it's going to open it in Chrome anyway, but I'm going to go to open with Google Chrome just to make sure. Actually, even better, I'm just going to drag it into this window here. There we go. We have a website. Woohoo! It's very exciting right now. Okay, and then if we go back to this, create HTML and JavaScript file for the project. Don't do this in a project in a CodePen editor, so we're not doing that. Yeah, to view this.
About that.
What's that?
Right. I have a quick question about that. So the
Sure.
Visual Studio Code,
Sure.
do you just type that in online in your browser and just download it? I don't think I have that downloaded. or an account?
Visual Studio Code. Yeah, I just honestly, you can use. Don't use. I think the text editor, Notepad. Don't use Notepad, but you can use any text editor really. So yeah, you can search for Visual Studio Code. It's a free to use, and
Awesome.
it's pretty good for web development, from what I understand.
Okay.
It's probably even better if I were to go through and install some extensions, or what do they call them? They have like, I don't know if they're called extensions, but basically you can install a whole bunch of different extensions to the IDE to make it more useful even.
Awesome.
And I haven't done that. Yeah, and I can't find what they're called. Usually it'd be like in here. But yeah, so Visual Studio Code's a good one. There's Notepad++ is another good text editor.
Okay. And you just go online and make an account, right? Or is this something you actually download?
You download it.
Oh, you
Yeah.
download it. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So Visual Studio Code. Yep. So you can download it. It works on anything.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. So another one I talked about, Notepad++ is a good one. A lot of people like Sublime. Text edit, not the band. I mean, the band is fine, but so those are some good options. Sublime's a little annoying because it's got some nagware built in. So every time you save, it will tell you to buy a license, but you can use it for free. Good question. Yep. Okay. So let's go ahead and create a JavaScript file for this now. So I'm just going to call this main.js. Because it's our main JavaScript file. And in order to link this up with our web page so that it runs, we need to include it using a script tag. And so what I'm going to do is actually put this at the very bottom of my body. Now, let me create this first, and then I'll tell you why. Okay, and we're going to say, give it the attributes. I think it's type. I rarely do this from scratch. So, script tag. Or I usually have, other examples of my code that I'm copying it from. So type text JavaScript is what I'm looking for. So we'll do that. And then source, I think, is the attribute. We'll just give it a path to the file that's relative to our index file. So since it's sitting right here next to it, we can just put main.js. Okay. And let's put something in here. Let's just do like a console.log. Hello world. It's obligatory. And go ahead and open up console. Let me just put it here and refresh the page. Woohoo! And I don't know if you can see that. There you go. This might make it a little hard, but so we got our hello world here. So that is very minimal setup. We created a HTML file, call it whatever you want. And then we created a JavaScript file, and we just linked it to our HTML file by using a script tag. So this is kind of the setup that something like CodePen does for you, right? So, but it really doesn't take much to do it. Okay, so that's the basic setup there. Yeah, just remember, unlike in CodePen and other things similar to it, they kind of auto-save for you. Don't forget to save when you're editing files. Can't tell you how many times I have refreshed a page 100 times just to realize I hadn't saved the changes. So, and I mentioned there are some plugins you can get for Visual Studio Code. One of them that I've seen in like YouTube videos will automatically refresh the page for you anytime you save the file, which is pretty cool. But I'm not going to take the time to set that up right now. But it is an available feature. You can really use those extensions to make it quite a nice IDE. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is add a map to our website using JavaScript. So we have 3 that we can choose from. We can use, well, 4, I guess, technically. So we have open layers, we have leaflet, we have cesium, the 3D globe, and we have Esri. I'm going to throw Esri out, but out of the remaining 3, which would you like to see? Your
Personally, I feel like open layers just because that's the one that's in Tethys.
Okay.
But I know I've heard that leaflet's easier to use. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, leaflet is a little easier to use, but maybe that's another reason for open layers. Because once you see open layers, you probably figure leaflet out. Okay, so we have 1 vote for open layers.
I concur.
Okay, so let's do open layers. And if we have time, I'll do a leaflet example as well. But let's just do open layers to start with. So first thing I'm going to do is pull up open layers. And we'll go to their quick start page. So what we need to do is we need to include both their CSS file and their JavaScript file library. Okay. And they have a style embedded right here in here. I'm actually going to create a separate style script for that. So let's go ahead and just copy this and we'll add it to our head. Okay. And it is long, so it's lovely. And it looks like we're getting version 6.6.1. We'll add their script here. Now, one thing I should point out, notice when I put open layer script, I put them in the head tag up above my content that's in the body, but I put my main.js down below. So the general idea of where you put your script tags is any libraries that don't necessarily run anything when they are loaded, like open layers, you put in the head. So they're loaded up front, and then any of your code that manipulates the code on the page, in this case, it's going to be the map on the page, right? Should go after the content at the bottom of the body. And the thinking there is that when the page is loaded, the web browser is going to go through the web page line by line and read each line and load it. Okay. And so it's better for it to have your styles and your scripts. I should say it's better because it's more efficient for it to have these loaded before it hits the body and starts loading your content, because then it's going to start applying the styles that it's already loaded. And then when you hit your script, all of the elements that you'll be manipulating will be loaded up above it, and any of the libraries that your script depends on will be loaded. So that's kind of the justification there. I mean, it won't break anything if you don't do that. It's just a little more efficient. If I were to put, I mean, for the JavaScript, actually, it is important that your libraries are before. They have to be loaded for you to be able to use them. But for CSS, if that happens after, it's not a big deal. What it does is it ends up loading your page content and then applying the styles after. So it kind of does a two-step thing instead of just applying the styles as it loads it. Maybe a little too in-depth for this, but that's kind of my reasoning for why I put this script tag here versus this one here. Okay, so we've got that. Let's go ahead and do what they're suggesting here, but I'm going to put this in a CSS file. So I'll go ahead and create a new main.css. And I'll paste that first set of styles in there, which is just to set the height and width of our map. Okay, and so now I need to include this as well. So I'll go ahead and do that here in the head. Again, so the styles are loaded before our content. Okay, and href is just going to be main.css. So again, you can put a relative path relative to your HTML file. Oh, and that doesn't have a closing tag. Okay, so that should load that. This is expecting there to be a class, an element with a class map. So I'm guessing in their quick start here, yeah, we have an element div with an ID map, but also a class map. Let's go ahead and add that to my page. Okay. And then this code here is how you initialize the map. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put that in main.js. So let me just copy that. But what I'm going to do, I don't want this to run. I mean, our script tag happens after the map, so that's fine. But I actually want to wait until the page is loaded. So I could do this with jQuery, but then I'd have to load jQuery, or I could do it with just the built-in JavaScript stuff. We're going to need jQuery anyway to do our Ajax. I think that's how we're going to do it. So let's go ahead and go and get jQuery. jQuery is interesting because it's been kind of a key piece of web application development for a long time, but it's becoming less and less necessary because JavaScript, core functionality of JavaScript is catching up with it. So kind of the main things you do with jQuery is you manipulate your HTML web page. So you can use it to add content, move content, animate content, all those sorts of things. You use it to do request data from APIs. So Ajax, right? And you use it for event manipulation. So trapping on different page events, like when a user clicks on a button or part of the page or hovers over something, you can have your JavaScript do something. All of those things now, there are ways to do them in pure JavaScript. But they're not as, I guess the API for that is not as easy as jQuery. So I still find myself preferring jQuery. So I guess it's up to you whether you use jQuery or not. It's not a terribly heavy dependency. So I'm okay using it for now. And the other thing is Bootstrap, I think, is dependent on jQuery right now. Okay, I'm trying to find their CDN. Download. jQuery migration download. So I could download the files if I wanted and include them just like I include any other JavaScript file. We're not using npm or Bower. Those are kind of like pip for JavaScript. I don't want to go through the process of setting those up. Maybe it's just this, huh? Here we go. jQuery with a CDN, stack path. It's funny, they say use it with the CDN. Okay. There's other CDNs. They don't actually give you an example of using it. Okay. So a CDN, by the way, is a content delivery network. They just host CSS and JavaScript dependencies so that you can include them in your website without having to host them yourself. Anyway, so let's get jQuery. And I'm going to put it here, script source equals that. Sorry, that was a little runaround. So I got this link, by the way. I don't know if you caught it, but just right here, code. It's in their Bower install instructions, but that looks like the CDN to me. In fact, we could look at it. Yeah. So this, yeah, this is the JavaScript file that it would load into your website. Okay, so I don't know how you get to this page, but code.jquery.com. Let's see if it works. So I just added another script tag with that in it. Now, hopefully I can use it. So let's do the jQuery symbol. And actually, we just call the jQuery function. And if we give it a function, then it waits to call that function when the page finishes loading. It's just kind of a shortcut that they provide for you. Okay. Whew, that was a little bit of a runaround. But let's go ahead. So we got jQuery, and we're using this so that we can put our code in a place where it won't be called until the page finishes loading. That's the summary of what we just went through there. We're going to go ahead and grab open layers example. So what we're doing here is we're creating a new map using ol.map. The target, so this, if I think this can be any selector, but since we didn't provide like the hash or the dot.
Nathan, I have a question.
Yeah.
What would be like, so you're saying that the jQuery means it will load after everything else has loaded, but
Yes.
so how would it differ if you put this, what you just copied in, not in a jQuery function?
Good question. Yes, so it's going to run as soon as this script tag is hit, which since we put this at the bottom of our body should be fine. But if our script was, say, manipulating the body, for some reason, I guess it's technically loaded. I don't know. I just don't know what the behavior would be there. Or if the element that we're manipulating was after our script because we weren't careful, then it's not going to be able to find it. So yeah, so JavaScript will run as soon as the script tag containing it is hit when the page is loading. So yeah, it's important to recognize that pages are loaded kind of one line at a time as they're encountered.
So what would be the difference of like putting it in the jQuery?
So now when I do the jQuery, it's going to run this function. Well, it's going to run jQuery here, but jQuery is just going to hang on to this function and not call it until the page finishes loading.
Okay.
So jQuery kind of does that for us, which is very convenient. Yeah, so essentially jQuery is going to wait until it gets the notification that everything has been loaded, and then it will call this function and run our code that's inside of this function that we gave it, this function here. Okay.
Okay.
And that's just a feature of jQuery. If you give the jQuery function a function, it won't call it until the page finishes loading. Good question. Yeah. Okay, so creating our map, we give it the ID. That's what I was getting at. So this target is the ID of a div usually on your page. So remember, we added this div to our page that has an ID map. And that's where it's going to insert the map inside this div for us. Okay, and then in terms of layers, their example just adds an open street map is what OSM stands for. So we're adding a tile layer with an OpenStreetMap source. And then our view defines the initial view of the map. So what zoom level and where we're looking. So in this case, 37 and 8, that's pretty close. So 8's pretty close to Greenwich, right? Oh wait, 8 is, do they do this XY? Lon lat. Oh, okay. So this is actually longitude. And this is latitude. So that's one thing that OpenLayers does differently is latitude, longitude coordinates are technically YX if you think about it, right? So they do it in kind of XY order. So wherever this is looking, we'll see when we load our map. So we should have a map functioning, I think, at this point. Woohoo! Okay. So that's a minimal OpenLayers example there. We can control how wide and tall it is using this. Now, some of you may have tried to do this, 100% height. And not seeing anything. Height is difficult. To get something that fills the page height-wise is difficult. Because if you think about how web pages work normally, they just scroll, right, vertically by default. So it's hard to define what 100% height is. And in fact, for height to work, if we look at our element tree here, we'll close this, there we go, and dig into it. So we've got our body, we have our div with our map, and then everything inside of here is what OpenLayers generated for us. In order for this to work, 100% height to work, we have to have every element going all the way up, including the body tag, set to 100% height. So we'd have to do, let's see if we can even get this working. See, and that didn't even do it. Adding the style height 100% on the body tag. Do we have to do it on HTML too? Yeah, there we go. But OpenLayers, there we go. So yeah, basically you'd have to apply 100% height to your HTML and your body. But notice that it's not top to bottom. It's got this little bit of overlap. And I would guess if we were to measure whatever this difference is where it overlaps, it's probably the same as our header here, plus this padding. So it's 100% of the view, but since we have our heading here, it's going to end up going beyond that because our heading's pushing it down. Okay. We're not going to worry about that right now. I don't think. Maybe we should. I kind of like 100% height. So let's do this. Let's get rid of our heading. Let's do style on HTML. Height is 100%. And now that I'm doing this, I'm actually regretting it because we have a CSS file. So actually, I'm going to put it in here. So HTML. I can't spell height. Wow. 100%. Body, 100%. Okay, so now that should work. And I got rid of my heading. Okay, it's not too bad. We still have a little bit of scrolling here because again, the map is 100% height, but there's this little bit of padding that I think OpenLayers adds by default. So let's just, I think it's padding, might be a margin. Let's look at it. Inspect you. So I'm trying to use this select element to select this, and it's not working. Okay. So here's our map. So our map div doesn't actually have padding, it's what's inside it. And it's not even this thing. Oh, is it the map? Oh, it's the body. The body, so it's not even OpenLayers. I'm sorry, OpenLayers. I shouldn't have done that. I think it's Chrome has a default style for the body that is an 8 margin. See that? So let's just reset that. There's actually CSS libraries. In fact, Bootstrap will reset this for you. But let's just set the margin. Oops, wow, what am I doing? Margin 0. It's been a long day already. It's only noon, so haha, there we go. No scroll bar and our map fills the page. We did it. Okay, does that make sense what I'm talking about in terms of making sure the height is 100% all the way up the tree? So we had to make sure that everything, the body and even the HTML tag had height set to 100% in order to get this to easily fill our page with height 100%. Okay. Whew. There we go. So let's go back to our instructions. We have an OpenLayers map. Add a base map like OpenStreetMap or one of Esri's. We kind of got the OpenStreetMap one for free, but I think I want to add one of Esri's because they have some cool base maps. So let's see. What I'm going to do for that is actually go to OpenLayers website and click on examples because they have, I don't know, at least 100 examples. They have a lot of examples. And I'm going to search for Esri. What I want is this map service. Map service. XYZ, I think, works as well. Let's look at XYZ. What is this? An XYZ source, I think, is how they do their base maps. They're called XYZ sources because they take an X, Y, and Z. X, Y, and Z. So it looks like it's not too hard to add one of these. And this is a world topo map from ArcGIS Online. So let's go ahead and just add this one. Okay, so I'm actually just going to copy this block inside here, inside layers. And I'm going to delete the OpenLayers original OpenStreetMap. And notice a layers is an array here. So you can have multiple layers. And actually, yeah, that's fine. I'll just do it there, I guess. So I'm defining one element inside of this layers array that is a tile layer. And
I have another question.
yeah, go ahead.
How come, like, I feel like with the previous layer that you just removed, you had to do like OL dot new tile layer?
Uh-huh.
How come this example doesn't have that?
I need to fix it still.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Okay, yeah, I was about to get to that. So yeah, if we tried to do this right now, and this is something that was probably a little confusing in the exercises. open layers can be used two ways. So notice it's got this import syntax up above. This is called module, JavaScript module syntax, I think. And it's actually really quite a cool feature. We weren't able to use it in CodePen very easily because it would take some additional setup. In order to enable this usage, what we have to do is on our script, and actually, let's just verify it's broken first. Yeah, so I zoom, and if I look at this, I saved it. If I look at console, cannot use import statement outside a module. We have to tell the browser that this JavaScript script is being used as a module. And I forget how we do that. I think maybe it's type actually. So let's look up JavaScript modules. It's a very new feature, JavaScript modules. And so I even haven't used them a lot, but I have meddled with them like one time. Here it is, type. You have to set your type to module. Okay, so instead of text JavaScript, this has to say module. And then the thing is, this still won't work because we have ol.map things, which, yeah, open layers is a little, yeah. So essentially what setting it to module does is it makes it so that everything in the global scope is no longer automatically accessible. You now have to import it. So before, we could use ol.map because we loaded this open layers JavaScript before our script, and everything that was available there is automatically put into the global scope so that we can just use it in any script that follows. Once you go into the module realm, then you no longer have access to the global scope and you have to import everything just like you do in Python, right? You don't automatically get access to a variable in a Python script that is next to another Python script. You have to import it. And so, yeah, setting that to module basically got rid of that. So to get this working with module scope, what we have to do is use our imported version of map, which notice the path here, ol/map, ol.map, it's the same path, but instead of referring to it in kind of the global scope, now we are importing it. And actually, I wonder if we have to import jQuery. Yeah. Origin null has been blocked by CORS policy. HTTP data, it doesn't like it because I'm accessing it via the file protocol. That's unfortunate. So anyways, I don't think we're going to get module syntax to work. But the thing is, all of OpenLayer's examples are module syntax where you import them and then use them. So to fix this, what we're going to do is basically we look at, from the example, we look at the imports and we can see where they're getting that from. And that will kind of tell us how we can access this thing directly in the global scope. So for example, right here, we're using a tile layer, which was imported from OL layer tile. And I think on this one, we have to do ol.layer.tile. Is it tile layer? I don't know. It's either tile or tile layer. So we'll come back to that. And same thing with the source, ol.source.xyz. And I think those are the only two. And then we get rid of these imports. And we have to change this back to what it was before, which is text.javascript. Yeah. So in Tethys, this is, I guess, how OpenLayers is provided to you. So it's good to get used to kind of translating these examples to the global syntax. Let's see. I'm still not sure about this. I think it might just be tile instead of tile layer. Let's see if it works though. Yeah, I can't find tile layer. And I don't really know how you would know that other than, oh gosh. Oh, layer. Is it just layer? There we go. Yeah, so if we look at our example, I had a typo there. It's ol.layer, not layers. And I guess, yeah, you just do tile. ol layer.tile, but with map, we just did ol.map. I don't know. Okay, questions on that? I know that's a little confusing. Did that make sense? So there's, yeah, the JavaScript world is evolving. There's two ways to kind of work with external libraries. You have the module scope and you have global scope. Global scope is kind of the default, but you can opt into using module scope. But it only works in certain circumstances. So it's a little harder to set up, and we're not set up to use module scope. So we're using the global. But now we have a nice world terrain map service. Let me show you something else. If we wanted to use a different one, if I just copy the first part of this link and go and look at it, this is an ArcGIS server, and this is kind of what they look like. But you notice there's several of these services here. So if I wanted, I don't know, which one do we have right now? We have World Topo Map. So I could do World Street Map, I could do Shaded Relief. Nat Geo sounds intriguing. So I can get this one. And again, I could just use this same URL basically up to, notice this, up to map server is this URL. So I'm just going to copy that name out of the URL and put it there. And now it'll be using that base map. Yeah, went all Indiana Jones. Awesome. Okay, I like that one, so I'm going to stick with that one. Yeah, and one thing to point out, I think XYZ is an open standard, but even some other layers, like we're going to have to add here, I guess we need to add a different type of ArcGIS service. All of these libraries have support for ArcGIS services, even though they're open source, not part of the ArcGIS stack. So it's important to realize that you can use open source map clients with Esri services. You don't have to use Esri stuff to use their services. Okay. So the next thing, so we added a base map. We need to find a GeoJSON boundary. I don't have an assigned country. What's my assigned country, Jude?
France.
France. I have to say, I spent a day in, I spent a day in Paris and I wasn't too impressed. Just saying.
Well, that's because you didn't have the right experience.
Guess not. It was like 8-hour layover that I had, and it was rushed, but
Yeah,
and it was right before Europe closed because of COVID.
yeah. You have to go back.
Okay. So if I look at, so we gave you this data source and it has this map, which is great. But really what we need to do is we need to see the data. Was it this that we clicked on? There's a CSV there. I want to keep it in the JSON. Comprehensive country codes. That's just a list of country codes, I think. How did we find the data? Oh, maybe we just did this. So, I mean, this website, Data Hub, has like a command line interface you can use to download the data. And you could do that. It'd probably be a fun experience, but you could also just copy their link here and go download it. So I'm going to download the zip file, I guess. Maybe. Oh, I have to click on this. Got it. Okay, and I'm going to unzip it, but I'm going to put it in my code area. What am I doing? I forgot to actually like copy it. Smart. Okay, so copy it, paste it, and unzip it. Yeah. Forget how to use Windows sometimes. Sure. Okay. So BYU.js, I'll get rid of the archive. And we've got data. No. Here it is. Whew, that was hard. I'm just going to copy this out to here. And then I'm going to delete that, because this is really all I need. Let's look at this file. It's a GeoJSON file. And so what I need is to find France. What's France's country code? Oh, I guess I could just search France. This opened up in Notepad++, because that's my default. All right, so we found France. Now how do we get to the end of it? Dang, France, you're big. Okay. Come on.
It has lots of points.
Yeah, it does. It's a very, very detailed map of France. Holy cow. Oh, I saw it for a second. There it is. Okay, so I'm just interested in the feature, the France polygon feature. So I'm going to just copy that. And then I'm going to come back here and just create a new file called France. GeoJSON. Windows is mad at me because I changed the file extension. Okay, and actually I could just open this here, I guess. France. And I paste that, but the issue I have, I think we can do it directly from a feature, but I'm not sure. So notice the type here is feature. OpenLayers and a lot of things are going to be happier if we give it a feature class. And if we look at countries, or feature collection, sorry, it actually has the recipe for the beginnings of a feature collection. So I'm just going to do that. So I'm basically just going to grab those first lines, copy them here. And we've got features, But now we've just opened this array and we have an open object. We need to close all that at the end. Let me see if there's anything else at the end of this. Yeah, no, it's just these. So we'll just need to go control end, get us to the end of the file. Control end. Just paste those so that ends. This closes our array up there. Way up here. Oh man, France. And it closes our object as well. Ooh, what did I do? Oh, weird.
So is there no way to like pull the France feature from the country's GeoJSON?
I think we could. Yeah, I'm just being lazy. I think we
Okay.
could. There's probably a way to like filter it. And JSON doesn't like trailing commas, so we'll make it happy and we'll get rid of that. Okay, another way to do this. There's a pretty awesome website called GeoJSON.io. And I think, you can come in here and draw stuff. So, I mean, another way to do it, it's really hokey, is you could just come in and like trace it out. I mean, oh, wow, go away. Why did that pop up? My computer's bewitched. And you could get like a really rough one this way. I would accept it. Wouldn't affect your grade. So anyways, and it gives you GeoJSON, or JSON rather, that you can then, no, it's GeoJSON. Yeah, GeoJSON. And then you can just copy that out. This is a line. If I closed it, it would be a polygon. So if I did like that, it added the polygon to it. This is actually a really cool tool for digitizing stuff. I think you can also open files. Let's just open that file that we just made. France. To verify that it's valid, and it looks like it is. Good job, I did it. So that's a cool tool, geojson.io. But we need to add this to our map. So once again, I'm going to go back to open layers, I'm going to go to their examples, and I'm going to search for GeoJSON. And they have a GeoJSON example. Okay, and if we look at this, let's kind of take a look at what the example is so we can modify it to our means. They've got a bunch of different shapes, and they've applied some different colors to them, different fills. Yeah, not too exciting, different stroke patterns. So if we dissect this a little bit, we're defining something called image. That's apparently a circle style. We're creating a styles object. Remember, this syntax in JavaScript is objects, similar to dictionaries in Python. And essentially, we're defining different types of features, and we're giving them each a style. So this is essentially a lookup table. For points, we're going to have it use this circle style image, which is this point here. Line strings, we're going to define that, stroke for them, etc. So there's a whole bunch. Basically, this handles a whole bunch of different types of shapes and styling them. So that's great. Let's go ahead and copy that. We are going to need to style our thing, but we don't need all of these. So I'm going to start by copying that into my JavaScript. And I'm going to put it above the map. Whew, that's a lot. Ooh, kind of did some auto things for me there. Thank you. It's nice. But you do that maybe? Yeah. Sorry, indentation's got to be right for me or I can't move on. Okay. So let's look at our France thing. What type of thing is this? This is a feature And inside of the feature, we've got our geometry, and it's a multi-polygon. Okay. Multi-polygon are shapes like donuts. So they can have polygons inside of polygons. So for whatever reason, France is a multi-polygon.
I think it's for Corsica.
Or yeah, it could just be multiple polygons. Does it have some islands off the
Yes.
coast? Yeah, there you go.
Corsica is part of France, but not attached.
Cool. So really, we only need the recipe here for the multi-polygon. We can get rid of everything else. So I'm just going to delete everything except for the multi-polygon, because I don't care about it. And that includes the weird circle style image. We don't need that. So let's look at this. Oh dear. Indenting is not happy there. Okay, so we're defining a stroke and a fill. Okay, we need to import, well, we can't import those things, so we need to change them to use the global reference. So if we look at this, we've got style, stroke, and fill. So we're importing, oh dear. Oh, okay, I see. It's a bunch of things from ol.style. Style, stroke, fill. So we just need to add ol.style to these, I think. Oops. Oh, dot style. Dang, we are already at run 1. We'll at least get the layers on the map. We could do a follow-up one next week to do plotting if we want.
I'm learning so much, so
okay.
I think I'm good.
Yeah. So I can stay on for probably 15 more minutes. We should get the layers in there. Okay, so that's the style part of it. Let's continue in our example. So we have this style function that's using our styles object. So I'm guessing we're going to need that. And notice what it's doing is it receives a feature, and then it gets the geometry type. Is what this is doing. So feature.getGeometry and then get type chained together. So we get our geometry type and we pass it in, or I guess we look up that type in styles and it returns that style. So that's kind of how it's using this lookup. So I'm going to copy that function. Notice this is something that's a little different than Python. We can actually assign functions to variables, which is interesting. I think in Python, there might be a way to do that. You can do lambda functions, I know for sure. Okay, and there's no imports there. So we're creating our style function and then our GeoJSON object. So we're actually going to get this from our file. So how do we get that? Let's figure it out. And I don't even know if we can, it's going to be tricky. Well, let's try this. JavaScript load JSON from file. Loading local JSON file. That sounds like what we need. Get JSON. Aha, and it's asynchronous. So let's do this. This is getting a little more complex. So what we're going to do is let's try using getJSON since we have jQuery. And our file, again, we're going to give it the relative path. It's just going to be france.geojson. But since it's asynchronous, we can't just call this and have it return the data. We have to give it a callback function that it will call when it's done. And this will be our JSON. So let's do this, console.log JSON. Let's just verify that it's working. That it works, because I'm not 100% sure that it will work. Refresh. Yeah, that's what I was worried about. So since we're not actually running a server, we're just like referencing it by files. It's not happy. Let's see. I wonder if we could set up a simple server. That would be easy, or that would be nice. I don't know if it's easy. Okay, so that was one guy's answer. Data.json. Fetch. But I'm guessing that will have the same problem. What I really want to avoid is having to just paste the code here. Yeah. What if we do this? JavaScript open file. File reader. What on earth is file reader? File reader object lets web applications asynchronously read the contents of files. Okay. Read a single file. Display contents. Wow, they do all sorts of stuff here, huh? But it looks like we can read the file with this thing. And then we could probably, okay, this is new territory for me. I've not done this before. Presumably we would have a data API. I guess the other option is we could get it from that website. And do like a get JSON that way.
Would that be the way that we typically do it when working in Tethys?
Yeah, so normally you're going to be pinging a service, right? Or in Tethys, you actually have a development server running. So you're not accessing your files through just the files. I mean, the other thing we could do, do a node web server. Really was trying to avoid using node. Is we could use Node.js to set up a server. But that's kind of outside of the scope of what we really need to do.
So can you access it from the website where you got the GeoJSON file?
Yeah, let's look at this. Data files. Yeah, because they're like, use our API to do it. Potentially, let's try copy this link address. Let's try that. And then we could just filter it out ourselves, which is even better than what I did before, I guess. Let's try that. Okay, so it worked. Notice how that took a second. It didn't happen right away. I can make that even more obvious. So if you're using Chrome, and Firefox is similar, there should be a sources tab that you can use to view the source of your website. So notice we got index, main. And then once you're looking at it here, you can put breakpoints. And this is a good way to debug your code. Okay, so now when I refresh the page, boop, it pauses here. And so we hit this line and we go next. Notice nothing has happened here yet. In fact, I wonder if it will continue, tick, 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 because it's happening in the background. It's happening asynchronously. So it's not until it retrieves the data that it finishes and calls this function that we gave it, this callback function. Okay, so yeah, I think that's the way to go for this. So then we could just get France out of there, create, I guess, a feature collection using JavaScript. So now we have an issue though, because notice our map loaded before our data came through. Oh, sorry. So notice our map loaded before our data comes through. So how do we get it on the map? So there's a few things we could do. And I think what I'm going to suggest we do for simplicity is we break this out into a function, and we'll call it create map. Because then yeah. And actually what I'll do, since now it's all in a function, I can move that out of this. We can define our function just fine. Did I? Okay. For a second, I thought I used def. That would be really embarrassing. And we'll have it take our GeoJSON as an argument. Okay. So create map. And now we can just call it in here. And maybe for less confusion, we could rename this GeoJSON. Okay. So now let's move our console log in here to where we need it. Beep. See, it's not loading yet, so we should probably put some sort of like loading GIF so that they know it's doing something. It won't hit refresh 100 times. Okay, and and it is logging this. So now you can kind of see that this gets logged right before our map shows up. So now we've got everything happening the way we want it to. Back to so now we've got our JSON object. It has a lot more features in it than we want, but we could take care of that. And so now what we need to do is create a vector source. A vector meaning it's actually drawing the lines on the map, as opposed to loading a picture of the lines. And we can use their built-in GeoJSON read features functionality to create that. Oh, interesting. This shows you how to create a feature directly, but we're not interested in doing that. So let's go ahead and add that. But we've got some things that we need to figure out what they're changing to the global scope. So we'll go back up to the top here. And we've got vector source is ol.source. Notice they're doing vector as vector source, so it's not actually called vector source. It's called vector. They were just aliasing it, like you can do in Python. Import this from this as. So we need to call it ol.source.vector, not vector source. And then GeoJSON is from ol format. ol.format. GeoJSON. Okay, we're almost there. So now that we have a source, we can create a layer that uses that source. So, and at this point, it's pretty simple. We create, oh, why is that blue? Interesting. We just create a new vector layer. And again, we're gonna have to change that. It's probably, I'm willing to bet it's ol.layer.vector. But I'll check that in a second. So we create a new vector layer. We give it our vector source that it's going to get the data from, and then we give it our style function that it will use to style itself. And then we just need to add our layer to the map. We want it, I think the order here matters. We want it to be after our tile layer, because that means it will stack it on top of it. I think if we do it the other way around, it'll put our base map on top of it, and then you won't see it. So make sure your base map's always the first one. Okay, and let me check this. OL source, yeah, OL layer vector. Does this work as is? I don't see anything. Kind of disappointed. We didn't get an error either. Also disappointing. So where to go from here? This is fun. So much fun. Because we logged our GeoJSON, we read features. I wonder if that only takes features. Are there other methods on GeoJSON? Maybe we need to give it a feature collection. No, this was a feature collection though, right? Object. It's because we didn't give it a CRS. Let's see. These look like they're latitude, longitude with an insane degree of certainty. So let's try, yeah. So the coordinate reference system is defined in this one, but it's not defined in ours. So I wonder if that might be a thing. The default in open layers is this coordinate reference system, which is, if you just Google that. Okay, maybe it doesn't like that because it has a colon. It's called a pseudo Mercator, and it's essentially meters from 0, which is here, where that is. So that's why, yeah. In these examples, these numbers are so huge, 2 to the 6, because it's meters from the origin of Earth, or at least Greenwich and the equator, where they intersect. So, but our data that we got is in latitude, longitude, so it might be trying to read it that way. So let's try giving it the CRS. So let's just go, maybe what we'll do is we'll have our get data function callback do this. Oops. So we're gonna get GeoJSON CRS equals, is it at the first level? Yeah. this object. But we want it to do $43.26. Which, again, oh, EPSG, is there a way to search? If you look at 4326, this is the World Geodetic System 1984 datum. So this is essentially your standard latitude, longitude reference. So knowing a few of these EPSG codes is useful. And yeah, so let's see. No features. I'm sad. I'm depressed. Yeah, and I'm also out of time. So it's a little bit of a cliffhanger. But what I'll do is I'll post like the solution to this to GitHub or something, and then share the link when I get a little time to solve it. So
Are you going to do that with the plotting too, or do you want to do a follow-up next week?
I'm happy to. I think it would be easier for me if we did a follow-up next week and we could record a video too. So maybe I could just pick up where we left off and do that.
Yeah.
If at least you're able to get on, Jude.
Yeah, I'll be able to get on for sure.
Okay. All right.
Question on that. Are we presenting these like the last projects we've done, or is it just kind of like a,
I don't think we will.
yeah,
I think this
okay.
will just be for your benefit.
Sweet.
Yeah, because we're kind of more or less done.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for doing that. That was very helpful. So
Yeah, very helpful.
Yeah, good. Yeah, be sure to share the recording so that other people can get it.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, and hopefully I can figure out what's going on. But hopefully this gives you is encouraging, because even I get stuck with these things and you have to research them and figure it out. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if that's, maybe that's discouraging.
No, it's good to see like kind of like your process too, like how kind of how you think it through
Yeah.
too. That's also helpful.
Yeah. Kind of, I did add, yeah. Anyway, I'll figure it out and I'll get the solution to you one way or another. And let's do a follow-up next week.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Good luck, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much, Nathan.
Yeah. Bye.